Here.
Mr. Zangari is not present. Mr. Guyan.
Here.
Mr. Di Lorenzo.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Marinello.
At long last. My apologies.
Okay. Stand for pledge allegiance.
Joe's shirt is red, white, and blue.
There you go.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's a story. Living on? It's getting ready for the 5K. You lost it. Thank you, Joe.
Under the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231 PL 1975. Notice of this meeting was published in the July 20th, 22 edition of the Star Ledger and the July 21st, 22 edition of the Belleville Times.
Thank you. And communications for the 2023 calendar dates. Does everybody have them? And any comments? Okay.
I'll tell you right now, though, yes, to adopt this, please. Yeah.
Does somebody want to give me a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of minutes?
None at this time, Chairwoman.
The bill list dated November 10th, 2022. Does everybody have it?
Mm-hmm. I'll make a motion.
Second it.
Roll call?
Chairwoman Inaugurato.
Yes.
Mr. Banda.
Yes.
Mr. Bowe.
Take no part.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Blahman. Yes. Mayor Melham.
Yes.
Ms. Nettleford.
Abstain.
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
Mr. Guyan.
Yes.
Resolutions to be memorialized. Part 2, the Planning Board of 2118, which is 524 Union Avenue.
Make a motion. Second.
Thank you. Roll call?
Chairwoman Inaugurato.
Yes.
Mr. Banda.
Yes.
Mr. Bowe.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Blahman. Yes. Mayor Melham.
Yes.
Ms. Nettleford.
Yes.
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
Mr. Guyan.
Yes.
Approved, all in favor.
Next memorialization is PB 2205, which is 388 and 390 Portland Street.
Make a motion.
Second it.
Roll call?
Chairwoman Inaugurato.
Yes.
Mr. Banda.
Yes.
Mr. Bowe.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Blahman. Yes. Mayor Melham.
Yes.
Ms. Nettleford.
Abstain.
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
And Mr. Guyan.
Yes.
I don't believe we have any new business, so we have a request for an adjournment on PB 2006, which is 452 Washington Avenue. If anyone's here for that, we will not be hearing it.
Do we have a new date for that one, or?
I thought that was
7.
December 8th, unless it's settled with the streetscape.
7?
No, what has to happen, the town, and it has to be finalized, is going to be entering into a jurisdictional agreement with the DOT for the length of Washington Avenue. So originally they were asking the developer to go into a jurisdictional agreement, but now the town will be in Washington Avenue, the whole length of it will be in our jurisdictional agreement. And what we've been asking is the developers to sign an agreement with us where they maintain the streetscaping after it's installed, not us, because they're going to be installing it.
So is it a better thing to do to adjourn it until the mayor and council
I
take
think
up the issue?
I think we should adjourn until the jurisdictional agreement is endorsed and approved by the DOT.
So then, just just so we don't prejudice them, let's adjourn it to the next meeting
December 8th.
with no further notice necessary. And so it'll be heard at the December 8th meeting?
Yes.
Okay, and if we haven't resolved that issue globally then, and we need to adjourn it again, we can, but I don't want to prejudice the developer who's not here.
No,
Yeah, so we'll just, I think that makes
I
sense.
explained that to him, that's why he keeps adjourning,
Okay.
asking for the adjournment.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, applications before the board. PB 2213, which is 705, 757 Main Street.
So,
Development plan first.
I thought we had new
One second, I'm
business.
sorry.
Yeah, we have
apologies.
Yes, that's number 11, yeah.
Okay, so we have the request for the adjournment with do our new business. Sorry. PB 2215, which is 371 and 411 Main Street. First witness.
Madriga update.
Wait.
That microphone is actually. Okay, I'll put it.
If you want to take that.
No, I need to reach
Okay.
out. Okay. Okay.
Are you Mel Beacon?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll place you on something. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
So you guys know this, we're here to approve or recommend approving the redevelopment plan that was sent to you all for 371 411 Main Street. Mel Beacon is here as a representative of CME. She wrote the redevelopment plan. So you can go ahead and take us through the main parts of it and let us know what we need to know about it in terms of how it complies with the underlying redevelopment, the master plan and whatnot.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So what we have before you is the governing body adopted a township-wide area in need rehab designation for all the parcels in township of Belleville around September 8, 2020. Based on that, what we've prepared is this redevelopment plan for this property identified as block 9701 lot 1 in township of Belleville. It's about 6-acre property. It's bounded by streets on all sides. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it, known also as the KMart site. So one of the goals of this redevelopment plan is to obviously redevelop an underutilized large portion of the property. Also to provide more flexible and creative design, so in order to create a more economically viable commercial development in township of Belleville. The fundamental goal of this plan is to achieve a construction of modern structure of high quality, only commercial use on this property. It has always been commercial and we want to continue with that. The interesting part about this lot is it's almost a 2-block lot. If you look at Belleville's grid pattern, this property kind of is all over 2 blocks. What we are achieving with this redevelopment plan is creating a more grid pattern which would follow what is in the surrounding streets. So in order to stop one big box development on this property, on the 6-acre property, we are creating a more commercially cohesive with its surrounding properties, with its surrounding streets, this kind of development. So this plan is more like a regulating plan where we are creating streets within so that you have 4 quadrants of commercial spaces, as well as you create more pedestrian access for it to be more commercial viable development. Built into this plan are buffer requirements because we are aware that Terry Street as well as the street rear of this property, I'm trying to remember the name, Stephen Street, sorry, both are residential properties. So we have kept buffer requirement from there in order to make it more cohesive for these residential development. Overall, the property would have commercial development and parking garages behind the commercial facility. We have permitted all types of commercial except
We are prohibiting, large retail stores that do large type of construction, rental equipment and things of that nature, in order to create more of a commercial development. Overall, this plan is consistent with Township of Belleville Master Plan, which was, last done in 2021. One of the main goals of our master plan was to encourage more balanced land use, commercial land use. I think this plan is achieving that. And also propose developments that are more good in design, more, are reliable on community appearance. And I think this redevelopment plan is doing that. So overall, it's consistent with the Township of Belleville's goals and master plans. And I would recommend for this board to give it its consistency review. So, thank you.
I have a question. Would this permit like a Home Depot or no?
Depending if it fits into the 30,000 square feet quadrants. However, it's not going to allow what Home Depot has, like large construction equipment rentals, so probably not, if that's what they're
And you think it would be a better plan to like put a street in between the lot?
It'll create more of attractive retail when you have the pedestrian vehicular access all over the 6-acre lot. This way it's cutting in where people can walk in and create more retail viability.
Would you put one street or two streets?
So there's the Ralph Street extension which goes on, so we're trying to create that pattern as well as the main street that goes up the street. So,
I know there's a lot of residential on Stevens.
yes.
I don't know, maybe you'd like to limit the amount of driveways or...
So we are not allowing vehicular access or, the retail stores opening onto Stephens or Terry Street.
Good.
All access will be from the inside.
In addition, to your point, the plan really allows for a lot of landscaping in Birmingham to protect the existing residential. But right now, it's just an empty lot with a big box on it.
Yeah, I know with KMart, people used to exit Stevens, I got friends that live there and...
Right now, there's a lot of thought that went into this for berms and for landscaping to protect the existing residential.
So just to clarify, streets, it's not actually,
One street.
it's actually a street, two-way street?
So it would be Ralph Street, it would be a 60-foot street that kind of extend, but it will have a pedestrian component to it. So,
And that street ends at
yeah,
the sides.
abruptly, yeah.
Today, yeah.
It used to be there.
Yep.
So basically what they did at Franklin Avenue with the, where the Starbucks and stuff is. They sort of street through there, big piece of property.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a driveway. There's a driveway that doesn't intersect the street. So it looks like 4 quadrants, but that's actually a driveway, not a real street.
Is that street exit somewhere?
Yeah.
Wraps around exits?
Mains
Oh,
and...
no.
Yeah.
Mill and Franklin.
Oh, they probably into that.
So it funnels through, it's a street. It's a street. Yeah. This would, I guess, create the same thing. My issue with it is maybe we're a little too liberal with what we allow on the site. The same thing with what happened at Franklin. They promised us a whole bunch of stuff they were going to give us, and then since our underwriting was very broad, we ended up with them coming and saying they wanted to put a bunch of fast food restaurants and divide it up 1,000 little times. And what we're doing here is we're creating a bunch of those little pad sites that might be conducive to just that. So maybe we could drill down some of these things that we allow and kind of cross some off,
So this plan does prohibit drive-up facilities, so drive-through.
It also
and,
allows fast food restaurants. So,
It does allow restaurants.
like
fast food.
catering halls, maybe we don't want any of that, tattoo establishments, permanent makeup, what else is on here? Massage parlors, laundry, manufacturing warehouses, cultivation warehouses. These are things that aren't, this is like the center of a district, right? This is an anchor piece of property. That always was an anchor to the district that brought people in to either shop, spend money, to work. I mean, I think in essence of what we're doing, I think we should kind of keep those 3 principles as a piece of this. Something that brings people in, something that's an anchor to our business district, which this is the dead center of it, right? You get off 21, it's right there. And some place people where work, make money, spend money, whatever it might be. So in essence, I'd like to keep the uses as high as possible.
Understood. I think the idea behind was, we regulate this plan more on the way the streets would be laid out and actually give the commercial uses the chance to, what is in the market and can rent out and prepare. But I do understand where you are saying to limit the type of, some of these uses.
I mean, I'd be happy if they even had to come back and maybe ask us for adjustments to the plan rather than just blatantly let them.
Understood.
So we're not.
We recommend
adopting
it.
the plan.
We're recommending. I just want to.
No, but
Yeah.
what you're saying is right. If there are recommendations that you want to make, this is our opportunity collectively to make them. We send them over to the mayor and council. They'll take that up
Yeah.
and decide what if anything they want to adopt from our recommendation. So if there's a specific recommendation, on page 8 is where the permitted uses begin. If there's something from there that you specifically think maybe we ought to not have that there, and/or not have it there as of right, and make them come back if there's a particular use that they want to use that's not here. They can always come in either to amend the plan or to get a variance from the plan. So this is just what's going to be allowed as a right in a zone. So you can make that recommendation, and then the mayor and council would take it up. So if there's some consensus on anything you want to take out of here, you just let us know, and we can put that in the letter.
Yeah, I think they would benefit from being able to have a little bit of that negotiation before they just come in and you have no choice after that.
Well, again, how do you regulate that? How do
You
you
just limit the uses, and when they come in with something, they say, well, I want to add this use.
Right, but if I understood you correctly, Council, that's,
We just recommend you.
I know, but how can we,
You gotta watch, because I remember, I was on the board when we did the Franklin Street one in Silver Lake, and the developer told us it was gonna be an Outback Steakhouse, a post office, Old Navy,
Yeah.
and once you agree to retail, it's any kind of retail you want.
Yes,
Well,
I'd
So you
rather
got
just,
nothing what he said.
right, that's
So you
exactly
gotta,
what I'm,
like
that's,
Brian said, I think you need to be specific by limiting what can go there.
and I agree with you, so how do we address that?
Prohibiting,
That's on the council?
so we make a recommendation on what permitted uses we think should stay and what should go, and then from there, the council agrees or disagrees.
If we have consensus among us,
Mhm.
or the voting members of the board anyway, as to what things they would like to move, we'll make that recommendation as part of the letter, and then the council will do with it what they choose, but at least you've had your voice heard.
Well,
And,
I think that's the
Right,
best way to do
but
it.
to have that open communication, which we're having now,
Yeah.
right, everybody's gonna have a say, how does that get brought up? You know what I mean, like, so that would come from the president down and say, what do you think, what do you don't
Yeah,
think?
letter's gonna go from the planning board back to the mayor and council.
How to have a conversation
So
right now.
so back up. It's gonna come from the planning board, right? But we here are on the planning board. When do we have that say of what
Right
we
now.
think?
Right now.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
We just
That's
have
what I was
this
asking the question.
conversation.
That's why I'm saying,
Right.
if you want to take it, if there's anyone who particularly has an
Do it now.
objection to a use,
Okay,
do it now, we'll take a poll among us and put it in the letter.
I got you. But I didn't know if you all understood it that way. I didn't.
Yeah.
That's just-
I may not have been so clear, I'm sorry.
No, just,
So, Brian, if there's certain things you want to outline, we could then take a,
Well, listen, I'll go down the list now. So, like I said, I think that the core goal of this whole plan should be along the lines of keeping an anchor institution or business at that site, or group of businesses at that site. Something that should bring jobs, bring people, spend money, whatever it might be. So if we go down this list, I don't think any type of manufacturing does a lot of that. I don't think a grow facility does that just because it's a warehouse. I don't think a laundromat will do well for that. I don't think a massage parlor will do well for that. If anybody else sees anything else, stop me.
how about a dollar store?
I don't think a dollar is still, I think we should just nix retail and let them come in and have to negotiate it.
Yes.
I
Right.
agree, because you
Permanent
you also
makeup.
have to look at your surroundings, what's there at.
retail is 25,
5.
retail shopping center is 27. I heard you mention earlier tattoo establishment.
Just delete retail. Delete retail, let them negotiate. Right, because if we do retail again, up by Franklin, retail. They came in and wanted to build 4 or 5 fast food restaurants on that site, you know, so
It's fast food
The
retail.
permanent makeup is also part of,
you wanna play with this definition? Let's not,
Excuse me,
let's not.
I can't take anybody down.
Sorry.
Because you're all talking at the same time, so.
do we want to add permanent makeup as well?
Yeah,
Yes.
I say list nothing and have a negotiation. Go the other way.
like it.
Go the other way.
Like, can we do that?
You gotta have the use. You gotta have.
I,
So-
what
so-
should I
so-
take down,
Yes.
because everybody's talking.
I'm sorry.
I
All right,
can't do my job.
No, we're talking over each other. Let's-
Please
If
go
2
through
people
the
talk at
chair.
once, I can't take either.
Everyone, please go through the chair.
And 5 people are talking.
Yes.
Thank you.
So Tom, you want to finish your thought?
My thought is, there's 29 here, right? If we reduce it to, like you said, minimal, 1, 2, 3, and then negotiate accordingly, but which ones do you keep, right? Like when we just talked about it, retail, there's a lot of different definitions, right? Or restaurants definitions, or this. How do we narrow the scope and then negotiate accordingly?
Allow office space.
So none of that, go ahead, Mayor.
We, with the board, the planning board would, again, approve the plan with the following recommendations to mayor and council. Nothing we say here is binding, as we know, and then it would be up to the mayor and council to decide what to keep in and take out. So we're not negotiating anything here.
Right, so the
Nor do
point
we
is, why
to
even have anything? Or do you gotta have it, or
We
you...
have to have a use for
Yeah,
the
so,
property.
okay, so make one use.
Yeah.
If that's where it has to go, it's one use, because then it has to, when it does come to us, it's gonna come specifically of what they want.
So we leave office and,
I'm just asking, I'm sorry.
no.
Through the chair, that's my opinion. I don't know if anybody else has a recommendation or opinion.
I think what you're trying to get is to the goal of redeveloping. If you, let's say we agree with the idea that this area should be redeveloped, and generally speaking in the way in which the planner is recommending in the plan, but there's some question about what uses should be allowed. I think we're better off, and it'll provide better clarity to the mayor and council if we take the list that they have and eliminate a few items and make the recommendation that those get eliminated. If you're gonna have a redevelopment plan, and now I'm talking more like I would if I was the municipal attorney, I do both of these things, so maybe I'm just giving the benefit of the clarity that I have from the municipal attorney end, is they're trying to attract somebody to come in and develop this property. And it's gonna be less attractive if there are less uses available to it. So, you know, you are right. I think what you're saying is we want the benefit of making it a redevelopment plan, but then we still want them to come to us and say, okay, this is allowable. But to get somebody to buy into this redevelopment and to be the redeveloper of the site, they have to know what they're buying into. What are they getting into? So it's be easier if we took the 25 or 29 and cut it down to 20 or 15 if there were that many that you didn't want, rather than to say, all right, this should just be one of these uses and everybody else has to come back to us. I mean, if that's the way you want to do it, that is permissible. We certainly can do that, but that, I think, defeats the purpose somewhat of them coming here. Really, our goal is to make sure that the plan is consistent with the master plan, not to necessarily take our ideas and say this should be a bank or this should be a restaurant. The concept is that we're supposed to say, okay, this fits in, and she has testified to the fact that this is consistent with the master plan and the planning for the town. So that part I'm comfortable with, the consistency part. But it does also give us an opportunity to give recommendations. So maybe the idea would be to take some of these and recommend that some of them come out, and rather, I think, than going back to the mayor and council and saying, it's a nice plan, but we only want one use. That's less likely to get the mayor and council to say, yeah, we agree with the planning board.
Right now, we have kind of shouted out about 8 different things that we're taking off.
You want to go through them?
Okay. We'll go through them as Number 1, all such uses including but not limited to arsenal manufacturing.
Are we voting for yes or no?
No, I think we're just outlining them first, and then we can take a vote on what the list has. So number 1,
Number 1. Number 2, which is indoor-outdoor growing facilities. Number 3 is health and fitness facilities. Does anybody want that off the list?
I don't think that should be on the list.
I think Brian had it. Brian, you want
Number 4,
to read your list? What you
I
read?
marked them all off.
He didn't say health and fitness.
No, I'm reading.
She's just going
down
one by
to
You
one.
just write them down?
Laboratory research and design,
Yeah.
that's fine. Number 5, we took off as laundry commercial. We also took off number 6, massage parlor. Number 7 is nursery and horticulture. Does anybody have a problem with that? 8, indoor commercial recreation facility.
Nope.
Outdoor recreation is number 9. 10 is school and business. Number 11 is a brewery. 12 is a brew pub. 13 is distillery. 14, maker space.
what is makerspace?
Yeah.
Makerspace is, I'm sorry. It's like open storefronts that you could use as art and art installations. It's, a lot of times we get that offered to us. So say some of these 401 constructions, they have a lot of retail. They might not be able to rent one of the small storefronts. They give it to the town or to a nonprofit as makerspace for art exhibits and community type. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Am
that's
I
good.
close?
Yeah.
All right, 15 through 17 is office space, business, flex space,
Did a
co-working.
great job.
Co-working. Anybody have problems with that?
No.
18, artist live work studio.
No, why not?
All right.
What's the difference between 14 and 18?
14.
Okay.
Makerspace is,
Yeah.
I think that's more
It's a
art
studio.
space.
Okay, like arts.
So artist live work studio would be where the artist, kind of does his installation also. And,
Okay.
has a work
Okay, we took off permanent makeup on 19. 20, municipal off-street parking facilities.
That's
Sure.
fine.
Okay, then we have 21 to 24, which is restaurants, fast food, carry-out, bar and tavern. What's our thoughts on that?
So I think we should get rid of restaurants, fast food, restaurants, carry out, walk up. Why don't we do restaurants, dine in? Is there something we can do with that?
Yes,
We could recommend that
So-
21 be clarified to do dining.
right.
I'm
So-
sure you don't have some of these.
That's the next battle you have.
Yeah.
So 22 and 23 is off. 24, bar and tavern is fine. 25, retail, we're taking that off.
Or move it to a conditional use? I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, there's small enough pads that I'm okay with retail. I mean, the whole area is retail. For
So
small
it'd
enough
be-
pads, we're just not gonna get the 150,000 square foot big giant box because they're smaller pads. I'm
Money
okay with
in
it.
Conditional use would force them to kind of,
It's fine, man.
It's not really a conditional use though, because this isn't like in a regular zoning plan where you've got a conditional use and you gotta meet A, B, and C to meet the conditional use. This is, I guess you could do it conditioned on something, but you'd have to say what it is. in
What the
here,
conditions are.
What the conditions are, right, so, I mean,
yeah,
you could also recommend, why don't we do it this way, this might be satisfactory, why don't we say that we recommend that the plan include specifics about the retail rather than general retail, so that the plan doesn't have such a broad retail definition. And then that would be up to the planner and the mayor and council to make a conclusion on that. But at least we could say from our end that we think retail generally is just too broad. I don't know how everyone feels about that, but.
I think it's too broad.
So you want
So I could, in the letter, I could recommend that that definition be more tailored as to what type of retail would be allowed. Does everybody agree with that?
to include specifics.
By specifics, I mean, are we looking at, we want to limit the square footage of the retail to say retail, should not be smaller than 15,000 square feet? One tenant size, or are we limiting, are we adding more restrictions on retail? What are we looking at?
I don't even know if that's the right way to go.
I just don't know, how do you limit the dollar store and allow retail though? Is it in the dollar store?
No, once you say retail.
Yeah.
Once you
No,
say
but
retail,
that's what it
Yeah.
was.
And you can't just, pick out specific type of, like, for example, we couldn't write in the plan, Home Depot is not allowed.
yeah, you can't do that, yeah, so.
I'm sorry, is 25, 26, and 27 basically kind of all the same thing that we're talking about?
Yeah, those should be next too.
Well, 25 and 27 certainly are. Grocery store, I think, would be technically a different use. It is retail.
Retail shopping center could be a grocery
right,
store, you know?
Right.
Then we end up, yeah, retail shopping center should be next too. Because again, it's broad.
Right.
It's broad and it creates the whole concept of retail.
So right opposite this side, like you have the Lidl as well as, different tenants, that would fall under retail.
That's a retail shopping center with Lidl as the anchor for that shopping.
Yeah.
With four quadrants, that wouldn't really work.
Again, yeah, it's a 30,000 square foot quadrant,
So let's just let's just get rid of it. Don't worry.
So
Right,
25, 26, and 27.
and 27 is off.
28, 29?
28, catering and banquet facilities,
Gone.
Yeah.
All right.
and we took off the tattoo establishments.
for that.
Theaters, entertainment, I don't know. Entertainment, what was it, entertainment use stuff?
No.
Dave and Buster's,
But Dave and Buster's is that type of use is a restaurant, and also I think would probably fit under indoor commercial recreation facilities, so.
okay.
Which also I think could fit a theater, right? Wouldn't that fit under that definition?
Indoor recreation, yeah.
I guess theater is passive
I guess it
recreation.
could be.
Maybe.
Interpretation.
Yeah,
Right?
Always been a problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Did we take off 1 and 2 as well?
Yes,
Two.
yes, we did.
I have 1, 2, 5, 6, 19, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29.
No, not 28.
Oh, we're keeping catering and banquet facilities?
28's off.
28 's
Okay.
off.
5, 26, 27, 28, 29.
Did I say something about the massage parlors?
It's on the record.
How about they call it massage spa? Because I work in Waldwick, Bergen County. From my job to 17, I passed 3 of them. And they're called spas. They're not parlors. I think we all know the difference.
Yeah, but they also know the difference, so
Yes.
their application to our board or our town easily, we have a massage parlor in Belleville that submitted paperwork calling it a spa, and it got approved. And it's one of the ones that you would never want approved.
Well, we're taking it out anyway.
Well,
On the flip
I know
side
you're
though,
taking it out, but I'm just making a point. Like, I know a lot of people, my wife goes to a spa.
there are really nice high-end massage.
There are nice spas.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, in order for a license of a spa, you have to meet certain criteria too.
well, I mean,
By the
if
state.
the place is illegal, then shut it down.
All right, so,
Are there any other recommendations besides the section on the uses?
No, conditional uses, we should edit some of that too.
Yes.
Anything that's warehouse use or manufacturing should be out.
yes,
Delivery services should be out. So cultivation's a warehouse use, manufacturing's a warehouse use.
can we just eliminate E?
You could. If there's any licenses left anyway.
Okay.
So you don't even want cannabis manufacturer and?
I don't,
It's more of a warehouse use.
yeah, we don't want manufacturing, it's a dead center lot, so that's why I should take out number 1 too, because any manufacturing type would be kind of a closed off, kind of rough use for a main center.
You want life.
So, yeah, the point is to bring life.
So we would recommend then the elimination of E, conditional uses.
Okay.
Correct.
Anyone have a problem with that? Okay,
All right.
any other suggestions, recommendations?
No.
Anybody have any suggestions or recommendations? No, so,
Okay.
those are our recommendations and,
We're doing all of these, we're not keeping E3 as a retailer?
no.
eliminated retail.
The conditional use.
Good point. Yeah, so, now we're keeping in mind, of course, that these are just recommendations that we're gonna put. So when I send a letter to them, I will recommend that the board found that the plan was consistent with the master plan, and, but notwithstanding that, has the following recommendations, and it would be all the things we just discussed. Do you have anything you want to add on that? Because you've been listening to us beat up the
No, again, the idea was to keep it more economically viable commercial use. So whenever you are proposing something like that, you do want to add all types of uses, again, to make it more attractive for any redeveloper to come in and be able to propose a use there. So,
Chair?
Sure.
So with the uses, there's one thing, right? So say a developer comes in, or whomever comes in, not a developer, someone is using, they come in. Now, for, the store comes in, they want to put a store together. Does it come back to the planning board?
it will need a site plan.
It will need site plan approval. And then, okay, then that's when we start needling how the
Yes.
building, lighting,
Yes. This is
security,
just,
so forth and so on, right? That's another
Yes.
section of this.
this is just like, almost like an
Okay.
ordinance for that lot.
Okay.
So whenever anybody comes in and wants to do a site plan, they would have to, go through the motions, apply to you guys, get review, approval, resolution compliance, and so on and so forth.
I'm gonna draw up the letter and put the recommendations in, I'll send it all over to the attorney for the mayor and council. Okay?
Okay, if there's no more other comments, our attorney is going to take our comments and send them to the council. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can the public ask any questions?
It's not technically required under the statute, but if the chair wants to entertain it, you're welcome to. It's not technically required under the statute, but it's the planning board recommendation of the redevelopment plan is not something that needs to be open to the public.
And in light of time, we're going to continue to go to applications before the board. PB 2213, 705, 757 Main Street. Mark?
Chairwoman, I have to recuse myself.
Okay.
I'm going to take the also have conflicts.
Okay.
We didn't have to vote on it?
I thought we don't have to actually take a physical vote. I asked if anyone else had any other recommendations or had any.
For the record, you need a vote.
Well, look,
All right.
if anyone has any objection to me writing the letter saying that we agree with it, that it's in compliance with the expectations of the master plan pursuant to her testimony, and I'm going to add to that the recommendations that we talked about regarding uses. If anyone has an issue with that, now would be a good time. Thank you for bringing it up. If anyone has an issue with it, now would be a good time to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to write that letter to the, so I'm assuming nobody does, all right?
Okay, first witness.
Well, good evening, Chairwoman, Mayor, members. Pleased to be here this evening. My name is Donald Pepe. I'm with the law firm of Squincy Hollenbeck, representing the applicant. Applicant is CRP LEG Belleville owner LLC. Property issue is located at 701 through 757 Main Street, Lot 1001, Lot 3. The applicant acquired the property in December of 2021. It was an underutilized, dilapidated, unsafe, and rodent-infested eyesore, still is. The process for the township in designating this property, similarly to what you just did in the prior presentation, originally began in 2019 and ultimately culminated in August of 22 with the adoption of the 705 to 757 Main Street redevelopment plan. Now, the applicant's professionals, myself, we work closely with the township's officials, planning staff, township engineer, landscape architect, the neighboring property owners, in particular Arbor Hills, to come up with a design that we thought went the furthest to satisfying everybody's needs and concerns. Most critically, the design that we're going to present to you this evening is 100% compliant with the redevelopment plan. I'm going to give you one caveat on that statement. During the review process, we were asked to make a change that would actually result in a deviation from the plan. And you'll hear about that when the civil testimony is presented. But if the board wanted us to make that change, we'd be happy to make it. But as we've presented, it's a completely conforming plan. We entered into a redeveloper agreement with the township, and the applicant is the designated redeveloper. We're excited to give to you tonight a presentation on a modern, safe, attractive, and well-landscaped project. Before I go on, I did provide notice of this application. The neighboring property owners, and via the newspaper, I submitted proof of publication to the board, and I just don't know if it's your habit to mark that or acknowledge that, but I do submit that the board has jurisdiction.
As long as you provide it to the secretary.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I just, I also want to be clear, I don't mean to interrupt your presentation, but you're saying is the plan as you're presenting it is in complete compliance with the redevelopment plan that was approved previously?
The plan as submitted, yes.
Yeah,
We'll
okay.
present one request for a change.
Yes, right.
And if the board wants that change, that would trigger a deviation.
Okay.
And I do have the catch-all language, I did not notice.
Yeah, I figured it was in there. That's what I was thinking as you were telling me. Okay.
So what you're going to see this evening, we're proposing 2 warehouse buildings, with associated truck courts, on-grade parking lots, access driveways, landscape areas, and related improvements. We're also presenting this evening a request for a subdivision to subdivide the overall parcel into 3 separate parcels, one for each of the 2 buildings, and one for a separate lot. And civil will go much more into that. Now, I wasn't planning on presenting a lot of professionals. I have a lot in reserve in case the board has questions, but I'm going to make this as quick as possible. I only have my engineer and my architect to present to you tonight. I didn't anticipate there would be any deviations. I don't have a planner. I have my traffic engineer here if you have any questions from him. But with that, let's just get right into the application because I know everybody wants to get home and hopefully the traffic will be resolved before we're done. So if we can start with with Lauren Belleville.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell both names.
My name is Lauren Bellardo, first name L-A-U-R-E-N, last name Bellardo, B as in boy, E-L-A-R-D as in dog, O.
Thank you.
Lauren, why don't you share your credentials with the board?
Sure. I have my master's and bachelor's degrees in civil engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology. I'm also a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I have been for the last 4 years. I've been working at Langen Engineering on land development projects very similar to the current application for the last 9.5 years. And I've also been qualified as an expert in front of the board previously.
And where your license is current?
My license is current, yes.
Madam Chair.
We'll accept it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lauren. Why don't you take the board through?
I'll get set up then.
I don't know. How does the board see the screens? Can you see them?
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
have
Oh, okay.
Oh, I was wondering the same thing. So the project site is located at 705 to 757 Main Street, as discussed. I'd like to orient the board to the exhibit shown on the screen entitled Existing Conditions Burial Imagery. This exhibit is dated November 10th. Oh,
Yes, and I'm sorry, Lauren, I apologize to interrupt you. So, these are largely consistent with what we've submitted in the application, but in some respects different. So I'd really like to mark the presentation as applicant's exhibit A1.
Yes, okay, so this is the presentation that she has here. It's Is there a hard copy or something that can be?
We can leave you a thumb drive, I mean, you know,
The email is mainly provided to the board, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll just, we'll mark it as A1. This is the electronic presentation of it. So, you know, I mean, if she could, while we're going through it, take us through what the differences are so that what we're looking at, because some of us have these.
well, I think they're largely colorizations
Yeah,
of the
that's what I
plans that were
figured.
submitted, but they're entirely consistent.
Okay. So, all right, so A1 is the digital exhibit that she's taking us through.
So as I noted, this exhibit is entitled Existing Conditions Aerial Imagery. The site is existing block 10,001 lot 3. It's approximately 15.28 acres and it's outlined on this exhibit in yellow. To the east of the site is Main Street, which is the road that the site fronts on. Beyond that is Route 21 and beyond that is the Passaic River. To the south of the site is the PSE&G aerial transmission lines and substation. And beyond that is where a newer warehouse development has recently been constructed. To the west of the project site is the Conrail rail tracks, and beyond that is the ShopRite on Washington Avenue. And then to the north of the site is the Arbor Hills residential development. The aerial on this exhibit is from September 29th, 2019, and it's generally reflective of the current conditions of the site. The site is partially occupied by various industrial uses, and they're totaling approximately 343,000 square feet in buildings. Because the aerial doesn't really do justice of the condition of the site, we've also prepared an exhibit, which I'll go to the next slide to provide better context of the current condition of the site. And this is just a few images that we pulled from the blight study that was prepared by Topology. The study was done was published in January of 2022, so the photos are relatively current. You can see, that some of the buildings on site have roofs that have caved in. Generally, the site is in disrepair, which I'm sure the members of the board are familiar with this site. So I will go back to the previous exhibit. The site is approximately 91% impervious area, so occupied by buildings and pavement. The eastern portion of the site, which is currently occupied by pavement along Main Street, is within the flood hazard area for Passaic River. And the flood hazard elevation is approximately elevation 13. There is about 60 feet of grade change from the western property boundary to the eastern property boundary. So the site drains from west to east. There is some on-site stormwater infrastructure, but primarily everything goes to inlets that are within Main Street today. And eventually discharges to the Passaic River. And currently, in addition to that, the front yard, as I noted, is largely impervious. There's about 5 curb cut driveway entrances to the site. So across the frontage, there's a lot of different access points into the site, the way that the site is currently shown. So the site is impacted from past manufacturing uses, and as such, it is undergoing remediation for soil and groundwater. The soil is mostly cleaned up at this point. There is a little bit left to do, but that would be done as part of the demolition of the existing buildings and finalized as part of redevelopment with a cap. As far as groundwater, the groundwater is also impacted due to various industrial uses within the area. And it's currently undergoing a remediation process, which involves injecting a solution into the groundwater to break down any of the impacts to the groundwater. And that process is being monitored by an LSRP. There are monitoring wells on site that exist there today as part of the development. Some would be abandoned, but others would remain to continue long-term monitoring. There's also a couple of underground storage tanks, and those would also be removed as part of demolition of the site. And all of the remediation on site is being overseen by an LSRP and has been approved by the DEP. The application also proposes, as you would guess, demolition of the existing site features. So all the existing buildings that are on site, the existing retaining walls, structures, the on-site stormwater infrastructure, connections of utilities to buildings that are being demolished. All of these would go away, as well as the easements associated with any utilities that are being demolished. But we would be maintaining the existing water main, which runs parallel to the northern property boundary, connecting Main Street to Washington Avenue. We will need to do a relocation for that to avoid any of the proposed improvements from the development, which I'll get into later in the presentation.
And Lauren, just for the sake of clarification, we'll provide the appropriate easements to the satisfaction of the township professionals for any relocated infrastructure.
Absolutely, yes, we would. And then there are also the utility connection points within Main Street, and the stormwater inlets within Main Street would be protected and maintained. That would be the extent of our maintenance and demolition of the site. I'd now like to orient the planning board to our next exhibit, which is entitled The Rendering of the Submitted Site Plan. And it is dated November 10th, 2022. Similar to the first exhibit I shared, north is oriented to the top of the page. So there is, as we noted, there's a redevelopment plan for this site, and warehousing and wireless communication towers are permitted uses on the site, or in the redevelopment plan. This project does comply with all the setbacks and bulk regulations within the redevelopment plan as well.
So Lauren, just for the record, in your opinion as a professional civil engineer, the plan does fully conform with the bulk requirements as presented, the bulk requirements and the use requirements of the redevelopment plan?
Yes, it does. So the project is for the construction of 2 modern distribution warehouses, which again are fully compliant with all of the regulations in the redevelopment plan. The building A, which is the eastern building, is a total of 112,350 square feet. 102,350 square feet of that would be warehouse building, and the remaining 10,000 would be office space, located 5,000 square feet located in the northwest corner and 5,000 in the southwest corner for building A. Building 2 totals 92,200 square feet. 87,200 square feet of that would be warehouse, and likewise the remaining 5,000 would be office space. The proposed heights of the building are less than the 45.5 foot height as shown on the submitted drawings, which meets the redevelopment plan with a maximum height of 55 feet. The tenants for these buildings have not yet been identified. So operations, in terms of the hours of operations, the number of tenants, the number of employees, those items are not yet known because it's tenant driven. The access to the site will be from one main driveway that's along the frontage of Main Street. That driveway is designed to allow large trucks, emergency vehicles, and passenger vehicles to maneuver into the site. This single driveway replaces the approximately 5 driveway entrances that I had spoken about earlier, so it really consolidates the access to the site to one location. The driveway extends west into the site to provide access to the parking lots located on the west of each of the proposed buildings, as well as to the lot in the northwest corner of the site, which is reserved for a potential cell tower pad. A bike lane is provided along the northern side of the proposed driveway, and this can be used as a shared and pedestrian lane to gain access from Main Street up to the buildings. This lane will be striped as a bike lane, and will also have sharrows and delineators along the edge of the lane in specific areas. In addition, we have proposed concrete sidewalks that are located on the western side of each building to provide access for the employee parking lot to the building entrances on the west of the building. There will also be a proposed concrete sidewalk within the right-of-way along the frontage of the site. And this is the deviation that Mr. Pepe had mentioned earlier. As part of the redevelopment plan, we included a landscape strip between the curb line and the sidewalk, which was what was shown in the redevelopment plan, so we provided that, but in speaking with the township professionals, they recommended that we use the streetscaping detail for Belleville, which includes pavers, so we would be more than willing to replace our detail to meet that standard. So there are 80 parking spaces that are required for the redevelopment plan for this. We are providing 160 parking spaces. That's because that number, the higher number, really meets more of what is necessary for this type of facility in order to function properly. All of the parking stalls and drive aisles are fully compliant with the township ordinance. The parking stalls are 9 feet by 19 feet, and the drive aisles are 24-foot access aisles for the township design, and the parking will be ADA and EV compliant. To the east of the proposed buildings we have truck courts proposed, and the truck courts are positioned 4 feet lower than the finished floor of the building to provide suitable loading and unloading of the trucks. The truck courts consist of loading docks and trailer spaces that are 13.5 feet wide by 60 feet long, and they're all positioned along the building. And there's also 70-foot wide access aisles for maneuverability for the trucks. And these dimensions are consistent with industry standards, and they meet the intent for this proposed design. The total docks that are proposed are 22, and the total docks that are required for the redevelopment plan, or the minimum number of docks that are required for the redevelopment plan, are 20, or I apologize. The minimum number of docks required for the redevelopment plan are 22, and the total proposed are 33. So we're providing more than the requirement for the redevelopment plan. We're also providing 10 total trailer spaces on the lot, and those spaces are designed to have the ability to be converted to loading docks should the tenants need more docks in the future, and that would require township approval. Because the operations relating to trash and recycling are typically tenant-driven, we don't have all of the specifics for that at this time, but we do envision that it will entail private carting. And if tenants do require trash compactors to be placed, we would add those to the plans without the loss of any loading docks that we're proposing. And even if we did lose loading docks, we have enough that we would still be over the requirement for the redevelopment plan. The loading areas are in the front of the building, but they will be screened from Main Street using retaining walls as well as evergreen plantings. And there will also be sound walls on the northern end of the truck court. The sound walls are designed to ensure that the noise levels are in compliance with the state standards, and also to be a good neighbor, knowing that there is a residential development to the north side of the property. And the sound walls vary in height from 13 feet to 20 feet, and they'll also be screened by landscaping. And imagery of the sound walls and the retaining walls will be provided later by the architect as part of their testimony to provide some visual. In addition, this application proposes subdivision of the site into 3 lots, one for each of the proposed buildings, as well as one for the cell tower pad in the northeast corner of the site. Lot 3.01 is located on the eastern portion of the site. It has the largest frontage along Main Street. It's approximately 7.4 acres. Proposed lot 3.02 is located in the center of the site. It also has about 300 feet of frontage along Main Street, and it's 7.51 acres. And then the lot located in the northwest corner, which is currently planned for a cell tower pad, is approximately 0.38 acres. Access easements are proposed along the proposed driveway within lot 3.02 for lot 3.01 and 3.03 to have access to Main Street. We do have signage proposed as part of this application, which includes one monument sign that is located south of the main entrance, as well as 2 directional signs to direct the trucks into the truck courts. And per our coordination with the township engineer, we will be adding more directional signage and traffic signage, meeting the MUTCD standard. And all of the proposed signage is compliant with the redevelopment plan. And the imagery of the monument signage and the wayfinding signage will also be shown as part of the architect's testimony. Now I'll talk a little bit about the grading of the site. So we are adjusting grades to ensure that Building A and its truck court are out of the floodplain. As I mentioned, the floodplain is along the eastern side of the property. So the proposed finished floor elevation of Building A is up at 24.5, and the flood hazard elevation is at 13. So it's about 11.5 feet higher than the flood hazard elevation. The proposed green area that's shown along the front of the site is being reserved for flood storage and has been designed for flood storage. So as I noted before, the flood hazard area for the Passaic River does encroach onto this site. And as part of DEP regulations, we need to provide more or equal to the amount of flood storage that exists on site today. So we can't lessen the amount of flood storage. This development and this design proposes about 17% more flood storage than exists there today. So it's a betterment in terms of the flooding conditions.
And Lauren, I'm sorry, just for the sake of clarity, flood storage is different than stormwater retention, correct?
Yes, flood storage is different than stormwater retention. And I'll get into that more as I go into the stormwater component of the presentation. As discussed earlier, there is approximately 60 feet of grade change from the western property boundary to the eastern property boundary. So we're managing those slopes using retaining walls, and there are a significant amount of plantings that are planted to screen these retaining walls. And as I noted as well, these will be shown as part of the architect's testimony as well for imagery. And now to talk a little bit about the stormwater approach. You'll notice on this plan there's a lot more green space than there was on the existing conditions aerial plan. That's because we're reducing impervious surface by about 4 acres, which is a pretty large number for a 15-acre site. It's almost a third of the site we're reducing impervious to create green space. And in doing that, we are naturally reducing peak flows and volumes from the site, and we are meeting all of the regulations in terms of stormwater quality, quantity, and groundwater recharge. So DEP has reviewed our calculations and our report, and they have issued us a permit indicating compliance with the regulations. And the township engineer has also reviewed the stormwater report and design and has also found it to be compliant with the regulations and acceptable for the site. In terms of lighting, there is a mix of building mounted area light fixtures. All of the lighting will be full cutoff, downward facing fixtures, a 25-foot mounting light, and equipped with automatic timing devices. So those timing devices can control, the lighting levels at different times of the night. Light levels along the property line adjacent to the residential development are all at 0, as well as 0 lighting levels along the frontage, along Main Street, except for at the driveway where there is a little bit of spillage, which is generally appropriate for an intersection. You typically want a little more light at an intersection where there's a sidewalk that will be passing through the driveway. So it is appropriate for this development, and it was found to be acceptable by the township engineer as well. All exterior and interior lighting will also be LED. And the proposed lighting design was designed to meet the redevelopment plan. As far as landscaping, we are providing a very attractive landscaping plan. We're providing a significant amount of landscaping along the northern property boundary with a 30-foot wide landscape buffer, which is greater than the 20-foot wide buffer that's required as part of the redevelopment plan. So we're providing a significantly better condition than is there today. There's actually an existing building that's right up against the property boundary today. So we're setting everything back and filling that in with landscaping. The applicant also met with the Arbor Hills Condo Association to go through the project and discuss the landscaping and the screening that we provided. And they were happy with the generous buffer that was provided and the screening as well as the setbacks. The only agreement that they had to come to, or that they came to, happily, was that any damage to the fencing along that shared property line would be replaced in kind. There will also be screening of loading areas on Main Street, as I mentioned, using the evergreens and fencing. And the fencing within the front yard will be a decorative fencing rather than a chain link fencing along the other boundaries of the site. So our submitted landscaping plan included 477 trees, 881 shrubs, as well as perennials and grasses. And we did receive comments from the township professionals regarding the landscaping plan to enhance it even further. So I will now orient the board to our next exhibit, which is entitled Rendering a Refined Site Plan. So this plan captures some of the changes that we discussed through meeting with the township professionals. And these changes include distributing the plantings within that 30-foot buffer a little bit more, just so that they have a little more room to grow versus being planted so densely. It gives them a little bit more room to expand and move their arms around. We're also providing additional plantings along the western property boundary for screening for the future residential that will be constructed on the opposite side of the rail tracks. And we'll be providing additional planting along the southern property boundary for screening for the existing building that is to remain for our neighboring property, as well as screening for the PSE&G transmission lines. And I would now also like to orient the board to our next exhibit. So our submitted plan set included riprap swales within the flood storage area of the site. As part of our discussions with the township professionals, we'll be converting those riprap swales to vegetated bioswales. And we'll also be converting the lawn area within the frontage of the site to be more of a low maintenance meadow mix. So that way if someone is mowing, they don't accidentally run over the bioretention plantings. And so just to also provide a little clarity, the image that's to the right of this exhibit, which is shown as an example of a bioswale, that is what a bioswale will look like. But this image does show lawn, it doesn't show the low meadow mix. So it will look a little bit different than this, but it was, we provided what was recommended by the township professionals, or we intend. So utilities, just to kind of wrap this up, I know you guys have been listening to me drone on for a long time now. There will be all new utilities, utility connections for the proposed buildings with connections to the infrastructure in Main Street. We're also coordinating with PSE&G to remove the existing overhead wires and poles that are along the northern property line of the site. We did receive a question regarding the visibility of our proposed transformers from Main Street. The closest transformer to Main Street is approximately 350 feet from the street, so it's about a football field away. It's also going to be positioned 18 feet higher than the elevations at Main Street, and it will have landscape screening, so we don't believe that it will be visible from Main Street, but we also have presentations available by the architect to show what that rendering would look like and determine whether it's adequate. Additionally, I mentioned the existing water main that runs parallel to the northern property boundary. We will be relocating the water line around the proposed buildings, and we will be establishing a new easement for that water line. We also received a question from the township engineer regarding a water tank and the necessity of that. I'm just going to go back to the prior exhibit. So the team is in the process of determining whether or not we need a water tank. And if it is determined that we do, we would position it in the area in the rear of the site, which is shown on this exhibit, the rendering of refined site plan, as area of potential water tank if required. And we position it there purposefully so that it is screened from Main Street and generally from the surrounding properties. We've also coordinated with the Deputy Fire Chief Del Grande for fire truck maneuverability as well as hydrant locations prior to the submission of this application. And we've received review letters from your township engineer, the township planner, as well as we've received traffic engineering review letter. And we've worked with the township professionals to come to a conclusion as to how we would revise the plans to address all of their comments. We've also received, as I noted previously, a flood hazard permit from DEP, and we also received a comment letter from the Soil Conservation District, and we will also be able to address all of their comments.
That's Andy. Lauren, just a couple of points for clarification. You had mentioned the cell tower pad. We are not proposing a cell tower as part of this application?
No, we're not proposing a cell tower structure as part of the application. It's just a pad in the northwest corner.
And the reason we're doing that is there's an existing cell tower that's on the site that may need to be relocated if we can't negotiate their departure.
That is correct.
And we were asked in one of the review letters to confirm that, that all the required vehicular movements can be met, and that is the case, correct?
Yes, that is correct. We do have a truck maneuverability plan within our plan set as well that identifies that.
Your subdivision plan, it's showing the area of the various different access easements, but with respect to maintenance, with respect to who will be responsible for that, and other more written easement-related issues, we will, for the record, provide written easement for the review and approval of the township's attorneys, and the board's attorneys. At the appropriate time, we'd like to negotiate that in the context of an actual tenant being selected. And with respect to the fence, you had noted aptly that we agreed with Arbor Hills that we would replace any fence sections that are damaged during construction. But beyond that, we're going to go and we're going to fix any damage. You're going to have a consistent pole fence throughout the site.
For a secure site, absolutely.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Just a real quick question.
Sure.
You had mentioned about the pavers on the streetscape. You're agreeing to put them there?
Yes, we are agreeing to put them there if the board would like them. Currently, our current application does not propose them as we were proposing to meet the redevelopment plan. But if the board would like them, which as it was suggested by the township professionals, then we would put them.
So
Yes.
it's not deviate though? Yeah, well, right, so we'll have to discuss whether that's something that the board wants to do.
Just so the board knows, Briggs did put pavers in a sidewalk based on the streetscape plan on their frontage, so we're just trying to be consistent with.
Exactly.
Sorry. So just for the record, Madam Chair, that would technically create a deviation from the redevelopment plan. So if you make that request, I'd have to ask that you also grant us that deviation.
Right, so I have a couple questions. First is, what is a Sharrows?
It's kind of like the striping to show that it's a pedestrian and bike path, shared path.
Sharrow's a bike symbol.
Yeah.
How do you spell it?
SHARROW.
And bike symbol is not permitted.
So it's just striping, it's not bollards or?
No.
It's just striping.
I thought it was something you got out of a food truck.
No.
I'm hungry now, I don't know what it is. The second thing is, in terms of the engineering, borough's professionals for engineering and planning, you had quite a few things listed in your review letters. Do you have anything that you want to specifically ask her about from an engineering perspective? Specifically, I noticed there's quite a bit of things regarding landscaping. I don't know how much of that has already been agreed on and what they would do and how you want to handle that issue going forward.
Sure. As Lauren mentioned, we have been discussing the landscaping changes. Our last conversation, they have agreed to comply with most of our requests, and she did kind of testify to that, so I don't want to belabor the point. Again, we had asked for, more spread out planting, the 30-foot buffer, more planting around the southern portion of the property, and they are agreeing to provide all that.
Yeah, the only problem is when I go to write this up, either I'm going to write that you've agreed to comply with the requests of the planner and the engineer, and then you guys can work out what those are. But it's gonna be, I think what it should say, assuming we move forward with a vote tonight, it should say that you, based on what you're telling me anyway, that you agree to comply with the requirements of the borough engineer and borough planner that are within the review letters that they provided.
Yeah, the only caveat being to their satisfaction, some of the things
To their
through
satisfaction.
prior discussions. And we have the good fortune of having really discussed all of these things ahead of time and come up with a resolution. They're not spot on with the original request, so the concession would be, we would agree to comply with all the professionals' comments to their satisfaction.
That's fine, I understand that sometimes when you get discussing things, you come up with a third option that might even be better, so, but that's the way I'm gonna write it up when it comes time to it, so that I understand you understand the obligation is to meet to their satisfaction, and they'll work with you to make sure that whatever it is okay with them as well.
I just want the board to know that they're talking about the possibility of putting in a tank for fire suppression. The bridge development does have one, and I brought that up to them. That's why they're looking into it, but it's very benign. It's not an elevated tank, it's a ground level. But Bridges is about 25 feet high. You won't even see it from Main Street here with the...
What's the purpose of that, in case there's something wrong with the water supply?
No, I have a feeling their mechanical guys just want it for fire suppression. There's about 150,000 gallons in the tank, and they have a pump in it just put the fire out. If there's, God forbid, there's something going on there, just put it out. Yep.
Yeah, and our preliminary estimates suggested it wasn't going to be necessary, but at the recommendation of the township's engineer, in case it is, we're going to study it further, and that's really an engineering and planning and building department issue, and we will provide it. We're just showing you the space where we will if it becomes necessary.
I'm sure if there's any contamination found on site, it will be cleaned up to New Jersey DEP standards.
That's correct.
And Tom, I don't know, I guess it's for Tom, I mean, the stormwater report is pretty massive. To summarize it, it's gonna be better than it is now?
Correct, that's the bottom line.
And is there gonna be some retention of storm?
No.
No, it's all gonna drain into the town system, except
Yes, a lot
less impervious?
less than what's going in there now. And-
You don't think they need it to
And
be-
again, it's covered, the DEP reviewed it and gave them a permit to do it. So they're following all the regulations, not much more.
So Tom, is this not considered a large, not large, what's the major?
It is,
It is.
yes.
But I thought with major, they have to hold water for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, but they're a major, that comes in effect if you're increasing the amount of impervious coverage, and they're actually reducing the impervious coverage.
No, and I think that's the significant point in that. We're not reducing it a little bit, we're not reducing it by that. We're reducing it by acres of grass where the water's naturally going to percolate back.
Any other questions? Comment? You please come up and get sworn in.
Please raise your right hand, so do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Joseph Belnome, 839 Main Street, also a director on the board of Arbor Hills.
Can you spell your last name, please?
Belnome.
Thank you.
The developer did come to Arbor Hills. I mean, they were gracious enough to go through everything. That was great. I did also have a suggestion because I saw 675 Main. We have this brand new facility there, and it's for lease, and it's not leased yet. And now this is basically going to be the same type of warehouse space, and I'm just thinking of traffic with trucks. Are you going to also advertise it as maybe a possible studio space? I don't know if it's too late for something like that, like studio, as far as productions and stuff like that. I hear that there's a
Been a huge demand going on in New
Big
Jersey,
demand in
but I
New
don't believe that that's a permitted use under the redevelopment plan right now.
Yeah, something I wouldn't really know about. I mean, I think it'd be less trucks and it would be better, I would think, to have next door, but,
If someone
maybe
approaches
something
with
to
that use, it would be one of those situations where I'm sure we would come back here and happily ask for an amendment to the plan to allow it, I agree with you, it would be a very nice use. We're building these as spec warehouse.
Okay, so nothing has changed as far as what was presented at the Arbor Hills Board? Because I'm just looking at the building, right, on the bigger building on the east end, in the proximity to Arbor Hills. It just looks like it's very close, and I thought it was going to be set back maybe 20 feet, or?
It's actually set back.
It's set back 30 feet.
30, okay, yeah, that's just because the
And
building.
or, if anything, we've increased the landscape buffer at the request of the township
Yeah.
professionals and put in some different types of landscaping materials, again, at the request of the township's professionals. But other than that, it is as originally proposed, as originally shown. Do you have that sign that shows the proximity of the existing building as the current
yes.
site conditions are?
I'll go back to,
Right, and I just wanted to say that I'm here representing myself. I'm not representing the board of Arbor Hills. Just my personal opinion, something I didn't bring up during the presentation. I thought I might bring it up now.
And I can assure you of one thing, our conversations, our communication, our cooperation are not over tonight. We will keep you informed of the construction schedule. We will work with that association and try and accommodate any needs.
Personally, I'm thrilled that, something's getting out there, because it's just a start. That'll be.
You can stop. No.
Yeah. Just one more thing. That's it. Thank you.
Please raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and.
Carmela, C-A-R-M-E-L-A, Fleischman, F-L-E-I-S-C-H-M-A-N,
Thank you.
833 Main Street. As Mr. Melham, mentioned, it's been very nice that the developers have come in and met with the board. There is one other question we did have with the traffic. Is it going to be?
Not to interrupt you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That would be with the traffic person. Right now, we're just questions for the engineer.
I may be able to answer your question.
Honestly, Chairwoman, I wasn't planning on putting on a traffic consultant. The review letters that we received from the township professionals suggest there are no issues. So he's here in case there were specific questions.
Well, she didn't testify to it, but if you think you might be able to answer it.
I'll attempt it. If I can't, then your traffic engineer.
It's just the way a sign is going to be put up. Is it going to be right turn lane only? Because the concern is if we don't have the right turn, people are going to be trying to make the left, and it's going to back up the traffic as the truck is coming out. If they can only make the right turn only. If they're trying to make the left, it's going to back up the traffic. We have the other gate. We have two gates with Arbor Hills. We have a Nutley side of a gate, which is a main gate where the visitors all enter and then residents come in. And then there's a Belleville gate, on the Belleville side. And as people, only residents can come in and out of that side. So as the residents are coming out to make the left or the right onto Main Street, we're concerned about the trucks, if they're trying to make the left and the right also.
Out of our site, but wouldn't that result in just a backup into our site? I'm just a little confused by the question.
Well, again, as the trucks come out.
the driveway is designed as a full access driveway, so the trucks can turn left or right for the design.
Right, that's the concern. As they're turning left, the traffic coming down this way, if you have a truck making a left-hand turn out of your property, that's going to block access from the Belleville side, the Belleville gate coming through. Am I wrong?
If I may suggest,
Yes.
if you look at the other side, can I move this as well? If you look at the other side, Ms. Fleischman,
Yes.
I think your gate's on that side, right, where she's pointing now, up that side?
I believe,
Yes.
so
Right,
that would
the
be our
entrance.
Belleville gate?
Right, that was a concern that
Right,
was
the
brought
entrance.
up, and we were happy that their entrance was on
On the other side.
on the
Yes, it-
south end of their property.
So you're up way
Okay.
up here, the entrance is out totally on the other side of the building.
Okay, like I said, that's where I was getting a little confused.
Yeah, that's why I said, let me show you, because that's what I was
And I apologize, that's why I was.
Like I said, I know, believe me, I know I have two gates now. And then, thank you. And then with the trees that are being planted, I know there's the 31st and things like that. Now, I'm sorry, I know you said what kind of trees, but are they going straight up, or are they going like full bushed out?
There's a variety of trees. There's gonna be evergreen trees as well as deciduous
We have some
shade
renderings
trees.
with the architectural presentation, I'll give you a much better flavor of what we're talking about if you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's because obviously, you know, if tree branches come over onto the property, or are they going to be, and that may be an architectural question?
I mean, the majority of the trees that are planted along the fence line will be evergreen. There are gonna be some ornamental trees that are planted along the edge of the property.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, obviously, like you said, as Mr. Belvin said, we're thrilled that something is coming in. We don't want to give the impression that we don't want something done. Obviously, the entire town wants something done. I don't understand why you don't want to keep those things.
So really just to add a couple more points to that, I mean, again, we're reducing the number of curb cuts significantly, and then the traffic that was generated by this site historically is more significant than the traffic that will be provided by the site as we're proposing it. And those are really the two big takeaways. It'll be a net improvement in traffic circulation.
Mr. Fleishman?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Certainly
Please
do.
state your name.
Frank and Fleischman, Fleishman. I'm at 833 Main Street in Arbor Hills. So just looking at the aerial here, so there will be a cell tower pad, but there's nothing right now saying that you're going to construct one, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And for the record, sir, we would have to come back if we wanted to change our mind. We would have to come back to this board.
I'm just thinking about some of my neighbors and the fact that where would it be located? Is it located like the top left corner there?
That's correct. So it would be located in the northwest corner of the site. Currently where it's shown, it does meet the setback requirements for a wireless cell tower pad per the redevelopment plan.
And there are height limits in the redevelopment plan. There are other limitations on what we can do there. I believe they took into account.
I just know that some of my neighbors would probably get upset at the fact that there would be cell phone towers. I know the signs have settled about microwaves and EMF or whatever else, but having it like right there, you know, some people go a little touchy about it. It's a shame that, you know, your property is just so landlocked. You know, it'd be great if we had like a pedestrian walkthrough up to Washington Avenue or something like that. That would really add to it. I'm not sure if this is something I can talk to you about, or maybe another specialist, but with the demolition happening, are there going to be any plans made for rodent control, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay, all right, because, like you said, it's rodent infested as it is, and we lived in a neighborhood at one time where we had an abandoned warehouse. When they took that down, we had field mice for, what, a year?
Yeah.
At least, so we don't want to repeat that again, so, I would like to, hear whatever plans you might have with that as well.
We'll coordinate with the neighborhood on that. Well, you know, when we have a contract in place with our demolition contractor, the means and methods, a lot of that will be covered in there, and we'll make sure we address it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that has come? Mr. Sheldon?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Of course I can.
State your name.
Michael Sheldon, 47 Floyd Street. First question tonight is for Mr. Pepe. The applicant is CRP / LEG. I know LEG is Lincoln Equities Group. Could you tell me what does CRP stand for? I'm not sure it stands for anything, but I'm just curious who the other is. This is another partner or besides Lincoln Equities Group? Well, you're not sworn about it. What's CRP stand for? I did, out of curiosity, I got the business registration document for this group, CRP-LEG, and it seems to indicate that the main business address for this overall group is
1001 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest Suite 220 in Washington DC. And if you look at that, it's the Carlisle Group, which
What's that
is...
to do with the engineer's testimony?
Well, no, well, we didn't have a chance to ask Mr. Pepe anything.
He's
so
not,
I'm gonna get
he's
to the
not
engineer
giving
in a
any
second.
testimony.
I just wanted to put on record that apparently one of the people behind, one of the entities behind this project is the Carlisle Group, which is a huge international investment real estate development firm. So,
Okay.
you know, Lincoln Equities is in Rutherford, I believe. Their address is in Rutherford, but the other part of this is running out of Washington DC, down the street
I've
from
only
the White
been here a
House.
short time, but in that time, I know that you know
Just
how
kidding.
these work.
Just curious, I was
You
just
know that
curious. I
you
wanted
want
to bring
to
it
put
to
that
the
in, you can testify to that when it's your turn at the end for opinions, but this is about whether or not you have questions.
I'm going to now ask some questions about the engineering situation. All right. First of all, Laura, it's nice to have a fellow Stevens alumnus here, class of '84. I'm a little bit older than you, I'm sure, but it's nice to, most of the engineers that come here are from places like NJIT. It's nice to have a fellow Stevens graduate here tonight.
Nice from my side.
Thank you. As an addendum to what Mr. Flashman was asking about the cell tower, both you and Mr. Pepe said that there is an existing cell tower on the premises. Where about approximately is the existing cell tower?
I will go back to the existing, so that way you can see. So the existing cell tower, I'm zooming in right here, and it is a little difficult to see because this is, from an aerial view, but directly under my cursor is a cell tower, the existing cell tower.
You can
And
see the shadow.
The shadow cast
Right.
on this site.
Okay, thank you. So the testimony was that you're going to put a pad in, but you have no commitment at this stage to actually put in a new cell tower. That's a contingency in case you have to relocate the existing cell tower.
Right, I mean, there's a possibility that we could be relocating the existing cell tower, or, there could be a new cell tower tenant. There's not a commitment yet for that.
But just so that everyone is aware, if you go to the new aerial, with the actual layout of the...
Sure.
So we all know that if a new cell tower goes in, it's going in that little gray corner pad in the upper left corner. If you could just move the whole image over just a little bit to the right. Mr. Fleischman understandably is concerned about the impact that a cell tower might have on Arbor Hill, but I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that just to the immediate left of where that cell tower is going, this planning board just very recently gave approval and demolition has already occurred. There's I just point out here for everyone, just in this, right up above the ShopRite, there's a high-end residential structure going in there. I believe 115 units are proposed for that site. So that's actually going to be within a stone's throw of a possible cell tower, even closer than the properties at Arbor Hill. And there is some concern amongst many folks, the new cell tower technology 5G, there seems to be an increased amount of microwave radiation, especially nearby these towers. Just something that everyone here needs to be aware of. If a tower does go there, the impact that it could have on immediately nearby residents. So I just wanted to let you know about that in case this cell tower comes before this board again.
Any other questions?
Yeah. The remediation of the site, you indicated that you have an LSRP currently doing site remediation. I went to I think everyone knows here that the property, the Belleville Industrial Center, is on the NJDEP active contamination list.
Can we stay more?
She spoke about, please, she spoke about the site remediation. I'm just prefacing this. I'm going to ask her a question about site remediation in a moment. Just give me a moment without threatening me.
I'm not threatening you. I just want you to ask questions.
A few months ago, you said, do I have to have you removed?
A few months not. We're talking tonight. Please ask a question.
I am going to ask her a question. Site remediation, you said that you have an LSRP involved with the project and the site is being remediated. Out of curiosity, I went to the NJDEP website, and I can give this as evidence if this group wants to have it. But the list of problems the number of underground storage tanks goes on for 7 pages, and it includes not only fuel oil, but toluene tanks, phthalate tanks, petroleum spirits tanks. It seems to be that the whole site, some of these tank sizes are 15, 20,000 gallon, many 5,000 gallons, some are small, 500 gallons or so.
This is wonderful.
So my
For your
question
last
is, are all of these
presentation, what's
tanks,
the question?
are all of these tanks going to be removed from the premises
Yes.
before any construction gets underway?
Yes, so the majority of the tanks already have been removed. There are a handful of tanks that are still in place just because of their adjacency to the existing buildings, but once those buildings are demolished, the tanks will also be removed.
So all tanks will be removed, all right. That's a big concern because we just don't want anyone unnecessarily exposed to what was previously lurking below grade. The other question that I wanted to ask, and this may not really be an engineering question, but I want to ask at this point, no one on the board had asked this yet. What are the hours of operation for these warehouses? I didn't hear, I'm sorry, I didn't catch, can you repeat, what are the hours of operation?
There's no tenant here.
There's no tenant, so she couldn't testify to the hours of operation.
So, I mean, then is it possible that this could be a 24/7 operation, or will there be some restrictions that this facility won't be allowed to operate overnight? I mean, you've got residential areas nearby. I think this is a concern. Usually, hours of operation is one of the first questions asked by members of this board.
Because the testimony of the engineer said there were no tenants, so she has no way of knowing.
All right, well, you guys have often made as conditions of your approval restrictions on hours of operation. I think, again, because this is going to be right next to a very large residential area, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you need to have some restrictions, that you don't have trucks going in and out of this facility all night long, notwithstanding the sound walls and landscaping that are being put in place to mitigate
This board will take consideration of that at the appropriate time.
Right. Mr. Pepe said that he has his traffic engineer here tonight, but he's not sure if he's going to call him. But I did have one question about the traffic study. Perhaps Laura can answer this, but as I was reading through the traffic study, it's quite involved, it's quite extensive, but it did indicate that counts were done on one day, and one day only, in June of this year, during the morning to get rush hour activity from 7 to 9 o'clock, and another count later in the day from 4 to 7 p.m. That's fine, one day count, but the other big warehouse that has already been finished, located south of this, at 675, which has already been discussed by a previous resident, you don't have that facility in operation yet, so when you're doing counts, how can you properly assess the impact that the new warehouse facility on the former Kitty site is going to have? And I did, as I read through, there was one brief note that they acknowledged that there was a new warehouse nearing completion, and that they had done some computer modeling to include this, but I mean, until the other site becomes in operation, these are all hypotheticals.
Good point taken.
Yeah, so the traffic study, it's comprehensive. I give credit to the engineer. It looks like he did his homework, but there seems to be one big question mark, and that is we don't know the full impact that the other warehouse is going to have on the overall traffic volume along Main Street. Now you're going to have 3 huge warehouses. Last thing I was...
Just to address that, the warehouse south of our property, the anticipated truck traffic associated with that was taken into consideration for the traffic study.
Right, but through computer modeling, you don't have an actual...
Would you like them to wait till the warehouse is built and trucks are coming in and out of it before we have to finish this application?
Well, ideally, yes, it would be
But
great.
that's not going to happen.
I know.
That's not going to happen. That's partly sarcastic. I understand your point, but that's all they can do because the building isn't up yet and the trucks aren't coming in and out of it. It's an inexact science.
It's a question that's been raised by members of this board with all the other redevelopment projects.
Yes.
So many things happening simultaneously. When they all suddenly come online, what's going to be the reality of the situation? Mr. Venero, when he was chair, used to regularly make this point with all these residential projects. All of a sudden, we're going to wake up one day and all of these projects are going to be finished, people moving in. What's going to be the impact on the township when reality hits us square in the face? And this is another prime example that you have.
None of these are questions.
Well,
Mr. Sheldon, I'll take a guess, there's probably hundreds of these buildings in New Jersey already. And I'm sure they know the study of what goes on in existing buildings right now and use that as a model.
It's a point well taken, but again, you're talking about big warehouses in our little township, our landlocked township, which only has two means of access across the Passaic River. And I think the circumstances here to try to make a comparison of what happens elsewhere in New Jersey, where there might be much more acreage and less density.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying what I'm saying is they have these buildings all over the place. And I'm sure they know how many trucks go in a day and
I just think,
at what time.
I'm not a traffic expert, but the proximity to the entrance and exit of Route 21, I don't see any of these trucks coming through our town other than right off the exit and right up around the exit.
I hope
If you want to access 280, 80, the Turnpike, 3, 17, you're all going to access every one of them from 21, and you have exits and entrance right there, so.
That's what we're all counting.
Yeah.
All of these trucks go directly to
All right,
21.
thank you for your comments.
All right, well, the last thing I wanted to ask,
I thought that was the
Laura,
last thing.
one last thing. With these large rooftops, has there been any considerations to putting solar in place? If those rooftops are going to be white, they're going to be highly reflective. You do have ShopRite to the immediate west. You've got a huge, I forgot to mention this, the other huge residential project that's going up, construction's already started, across from the motorcycle mall on Washington Avenue. They're 260 again. You're going to have a lot of reflection off of these rooftops, hitting these areas where you've got a huge supermarket, another huge residential complex about to go in. Any consideration of what you're doing to mitigate all the reflection?
I'll just interject, you haven't heard our architect's testimony yet, and he'll go into details about that.
All right, all right.
Okay,
My
thank
original,
you.
that maybe solar, you guys will try to take advantage of these huge rooftops and put in solar, not only to defray your operating costs, but just to be more green for our community.
All right, thank you,
All
Mr.
right,
Sheldon.
thank you.
Are there any other questions for the public? Seeing none, close this portion. Your next witness.
Any other questions from the board before I go?
Okay, so thank you, Lauren. Absolutely fantastic job. Appreciate your assistance. Okay.
But call project's architect, Mr. Ford.
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Mark Ford, F-O-R-D.
M-A-R-K?
M-R-K.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I
K,
should
not
have
the
guessed
C.
the first name.
Yes,
Thank you.
Oh, Mark, just share your, let's cut to the chase. Your license is current, your license architect.
I am.
We'll accept that.
Thank you.
So, let's get right into your testimony. Do you need
I do. So it's,
The right button to go to the next.
okay. Short version. All right. I'll take a brief walk through the architectural components of the project and try to address some of the comments that were raised by CME Associates in the letter that we received as part of that, so we have that on the record. The exhibit that's on the screen right now are the building elevations for Building A, which is the larger, the easternmost building. As you'll see throughout the presentation, the elevation design is consistent between both buildings, so we have an overall comprehensive design aesthetic for the project. The bulk dimensions of the building are compliant with the underlying text. For the project, what we developed are elevations that try to reduce the overall scale of the buildings, These are not, as opposed to the bridge building, not terribly large buildings for their intended use. We've broken up the facades through a variety of reveals, paint patterns, and window patterns, as well as a variety of parapet heights. The parapets on this building will vary. The tallest parapet above finished floor is 45 feet 6 inches. You can see that on building A, we're anticipating 2 potential tenants, and those are tenant entries are identified through a smaller scale entry portal, which will be a pre-finished metal panels. The balance of the buildings will be painted concrete wall panels. Further illustration, a little bit larger, showing that building, the entryway to the typical entry space, as well as the indicated parapet heights. In response to a previous question, this is a roof plan which was requested to be provided. As you can see, we have illustrated what we believe are the anticipated rooftop units, which are located in the rectangles along the perimeter, the perimeter of the building. However, we have set those back into the first bay of each building to help the screening of the rooftop units, which was a question raised in the report that we received.
And Mark, just for the record, this is not part of our original application.
That is
It's
correct.
Plan A-3.0. It was a plan that was prepared at the request of the township professional.
That is correct. We prepared these in response to direct the questions raised.
And if we're fortunate enough to get an approval tonight, our resolution compliance plans will incorporate this.
Yes.
This was previously submitted to the board, or do we need to mark it tonight?
Well, we marked the whole.
Oh,
It's part of
it's part of that same A1, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, and we prepared roof plans for both buildings to respond to those questions that were raised in the staff reports. The shaded area in the middle of the roof plan indicates the 40% requirement for solar readiness for both buildings. So we are complying with the recent legislation requiring that on buildings of this size. It will have a white membrane roof as noted previously.
And Mark, that was specifically requested.
It was specifically requested that we indicate that it is a light-colored roof, and other sustainability design features have been incorporated and will be incorporated in the building, such as the LED lighting, both interior and exterior, as well as low VOC paints, low, highly reflective roofs, and then the solar readiness as well. This is the building floor plan for building B, which is the smaller of the two buildings, which is the west building, again illustrating the proposed tenant area and the dock on the east side of the building. These are the elevations for building B. As you can see, they're consistent in terms of design aesthetic and the number of reveals, the paint scheme, and again the entry portal for the tenant entry area. And then again, just an enlargement of that entry area, just illustrating the paint schemes and the reveals. And then again, this is the roof plan, again in response to the question we received from staff, illustrating the 40% minimum area for solar readiness. Regarding signage, this exhibit, this illustration shows potential proposed sign locations above the tenant entryway, 200 square feet, which is again within the underlying code requirements, as well as a monument sign you'll see in the lower left for the monument sign at the entry drive. And we're illustrating a single sign with signage on both faces. It's 6 feet tall and 10 feet long, which is again within the dimensional limits of the underlying text. We are showing how the potential tenants would be identified for each building, generically listed as tenant A and tenant B at this point. We are showing a fourth panel in case building B eventually in time would be subdivided into two tenants, anticipating potentiality of two tenants in that building. We're also showing a smaller illustration on the lower right for directional signage as trucks and vehicles, autos come up the drive to direct them to the proper locations on the site for either the service court or the auto parking areas.
So again, Mark, this plan marked on the slide SG-1.0, this is something we produced at the request of the township.
Right, this is in response to the direct questions we received.
Let's get to the pretty picture.
That's what yeah. So what we did, and we don't do this on all our projects, but because this was such a challenging site with the topography, we actually created a model, three-dimensional model of the entire site. So I'm going to go through, and again, these were not part of our original application, but we felt it was important to share these in response to, actually, one of the questions that was raised in the staff report was screening of rooftop units and illustrating how we were going to screen rooftop units. I think the regulation is at 5.5 feet at the property line and adjacent to any residential properties. So what we're showing here, and you'll see in the lower right of each of these sequence of slides, is you'll see a kind of a red zone, which is where the camera view is taken. So this is this would be in the upper northeast quadrant of the site, kind of at the base of the hill, and the retaining wall, and then the sound wall on top. So this would be kind of at the corner of the residential development to the north. And we're showing the landscape materials at about a 5 or 6 year growth.
But it's consistent with the type of plantings that are proposed?
It is. What we've coordinated with the landscape architect, we actually received the actual plant types that were being proposed, and through the magic of computers, we've put those actual plant materials into these illustrations. So these are the actual plant types that will be installed.
Okay.
This is, as you can see, is from Main Street looking due west. You can see the retaining wall, again, the plant material, and the large grass area will be that meadow grasses for the flood detainment area.
Mark, is it a 5-foot height with the view?
Yes, all these camera angles are set at 5.5 feet, so that's what that ordinance says. And as you can see, there's no rooftops visible because we've pulled them into the first bay of the building. Just going around the site kind of clockwise, a little further to the south, you can see the base of the retaining wall. One of the proposed sign areas, which will be facing east, we think that's important as the trucks come up the hill. They are identified, where to go. Here is, again, now at the southeast corner of the site, looking up the hill. The transformer, which is one of the questions that was raised in the review letter, will be sitting basically at the corner, the bottom left corner of the building, and you can see that it will be screened by the landscape materials. This is looking due north. You're actually right, it's a very tight part of the site, so you're seeing the top of the retaining wall, and then the grade change, you actually don't even see the base of the building, building A. Just moving around, you start to see the office side of the buildings. There's the transformer, you can see with the shrubs there at the bottom corner of the building. This is the angled portion of building B. This is now looking west to east, so you're seeing the front of the single entryway at building B.
And that's ShopRite to your back now?
Yeah, the ShopRite would be to my back. And you can see the retaining wall. So we put in all the grades to illustrate the grade changes and how the site is benched as it comes down from the west to the east. So here you can see this would be at the very northwest corner of the site, and then to the left of this image is the residential development. And coming down that side, this would be from the residential development looking to the south. There's the retaining wall again coming down that south, or the north property line. And then to the front of building A. The side of building A. And then these, we put these in just to illustrate how we did model the entire site. These are just computer views, camera views that we created, one looking northwest, one looking southeast. Again, just to illustrate the topography and how the site will be benched. is the end of the exhibit tonight.
All right.
Does any board member have any questions?
I got one. On the regrading of the lot, will you be using the fill that's on the property and moving it, or are you bringing in new fill?
Well, we can ask Lauren to come back up, or I can just supply to the extent that any of the building materials are tested and found to be suitable as construction fill under the road bases, that'll be reused, but I don't think we're anticipating any import.
Not a significant
Anything else? Yes,
Mr. Ford, just to clarify, since the signage details were not provided, the signage would be complying with the redevelopment plan, especially in wall signs, if the number of tenants increase, those signs would be, details would be provided and applied for.
Yes, that is correct. The square footages, the areas of the sign are below the allowable sign areas, so they are compliant. The monument sign is compliant with the underlying text as well. These would be exterior illuminated and with wall-mounted light fixtures to illuminate the sign.
And once you know the number of tenants on the wall sign, they would be specifically applied for, right?
Yes, each sign would require its own permit through a licensed sign contractor. That would be a separate application from the building permit application.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheldon brought up a point about the solar panels. Is that considered, do you plan on putting any, and then is the roof structurally sound that someday you can put them on if you wanted to?
Yes, recently in New Jersey, there's a new legislation that requires the large area roofs provide up to 40%, a minimum of 40% of the roof area designed for future solar panels. And so the roof structure will be increased to accept that additional live load, which we would call live load, onto the roof.
Tom, was the previous bridge developers, does that have solar panels on their roofs?
No, not at this point.
Wow. I think maybe next time we have a redevelopment plan, maybe it should be included to provide solar panels.
So I can explain to that. It's a recent state mandate requirement where they need, large warehouse structures to be 40% of the roof be solar ready. So maybe during the
Bridge was probably approved before that.
Before that. But moving forward, this would be like an EV requirement where any large development has to.
And also, he brought up about the hours of operation. In the redevelopment plan, is there any hours of operation?
There's no requirement or limitations on the hours.
And Mr. Di Lorenzo, is this bridge developers, do we have any limit on their hours? Or no?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
There are noise ordinances in place that vary depending on the time of day that we would have to obviously comply with, but beyond that, I'm not aware of any hour limitations.
All right, so for me.
Chair, I just have a question regarding solar panels. You can't force somebody to do that, could you?
The church is gonna.
40%.
No, I thought I understood you have to have the roof to have 40%, meaning to use, not to enforce.
Yeah, the bill just asked them to be solar ready.
Ready.
So, the building is equipped, so at some point when in future.
Right, so that's my point. I just wanted to be clear with that. You can't force somebody to put it in your house. If you want to do it, you could do it. It's the same thing with it's the same thing with buildings.
It's not really the same thing. The state is forcing electronic vehicle charging stations for parking requirements.
Yeah.
So they can do it.
Yeah, but they're not.
Right now, they're not.
They're not.
They're saying-
Okay, I just want to be
But
clear.
the state can do it.
Yeah, but right now they're not.
I mean, we could do it if we wanted to.
I don't.
We can't override the state.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be
We
acceptable.
can't make it,
with the
when
state
we
has
do a
legislative-
redevelopment plan, we could specify what we want in it. And we could say that we want solar panels. I mean, this is already approved, but
Yeah,
let's
but
say for this,
I
but
don't know. I
going
would like to
forward,
see that.
I think we do another large-scale redevelopment, we should include it that,
Not bad. We can, you're right.
so moving forward.
I'd like to understand the ones you can and you can't do, because sometimes you could overrule the state and sometimes you can't.
So I just make a comment on the solar panels on roofs. I know a lot of building owners don't like to put stuff on their roof. It becomes a maintenance issue.
When's the warranty?
And then, it's a big cost to an owner. They gotta be maintained, they get outdated. Like I said, I don't think they'll ever be able to force somebody to put them on the roof. You see a lot of, even the schools are doing them now and putting them in the parking lot. You could stay off the building, that's a better option, I think.
I just have a quick, are there going to be emergency generators for these buildings? No?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a possibility a tenant might make that request, in which case we have to come back to the next section.
I was going to say, if you were proposing, I'd put them on the public service side of the building, not the Arbor Hills side.
You took it out to lunch, or?
All right, no other questions?
So, can you go back to that northwest section in your renderings?
Can you just give us your name?
Joseph,
Make sure it's in the record. I know you.
Yeah, Joseph Melham, 839 Main Street.
Which one specifically, sir?
The northwest section. That section is important to me because that's closest to where I live. And that's the section where you said that you'd have that cell phone tower pad. And I didn't see it in the rendering. And that's something I didn't know about before. And I think for the same reason I wouldn't put a generator next to Arbor Hills, I probably wouldn't want to put that cell phone tower over there either, if possible. Move to the non-residential side of the property.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of the site restraints.
We would have liked to have put it on the other side of the site, it just wasn't achievable. And again, we're hoping that we don't have the cell tower on the site. But we have an existing, actually, I believe we have two towers, one's a monopole and one's the taller tower.
Really?
So, yeah.
I didn't see that pad in the picture, that's why.
Yeah, it would be just, I guess if you're looking at it, it'd be slightly to the right of where that camera is.
This is the northwest section?
Yeah,
This is from,
I'm looking.
from
which
right
one?
here.
Yeah, the top corner
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah. It's another, it would be just to the right of where this shows. And that was not intentional, it's just, that's what we.
The buildings themselves, do they have poles inside the buildings, like holding up the roof? Or are they totally rafters straight across?
No, there'll be steel frame buildings. They will have structural bays with columns. And the bay sizes are set up to meet current market standards for these type of users.
So you talking about exterior columns?
I'm talking about inside the building, holding up the roof. The reason why I'm asking is, if you were able to do studio space, it'd be better to have no columns in the building. That's totally open space. Consider it.
I've been in these buildings, there's not a lot of columns, they want, the span is the span, and the roof trusses are designed to, to work the
I think
load.
you have different trusses
Yeah.
that would sustain the roof without the columns. But, all right, it's just something I wanted to mention.
Just one other question, the fire department issued a letter, did you see it about the standpipes at the buildings?
I did receive a copy of that, I think it was an email.
Right.
Typically, in a building this size, what we would have on the fire suppression side is what we call hose drops at each of the perimeter exterior doors, usually a 2 or 2.5 inch valve that a fireman could hook a hose up to. We typically don't put standpipes in this size of building. This is a different building. I think the context of that email was kind of comparing it to the bridge building, which is much deeper in its depth. These buildings, I have the dimensions right here. They're yeah, I know. Well, I want to make sure I get them. I always get these buildings reversed. So building A, the larger of the two, is 210 feet deep, and building B is 175. That's not very deep in width, total width for this type of structure. But historically, what we do is we do the hose drops at the doors for the fire department. You space the doors at 100 feet on center, and the fire department can come in and attach a hose to those hose drops to activate if they want to pump into the sprinkler system.
If the fire department has sent you an email recommending this, you wouldn't be opposed to adding this then, just because they did recommend it?
I don't think it was a recommendation, I think it was a question if these were going to be provided. And we, as stated earlier, we're still evaluating the overall fire suppression requirements for the project. We had a flow, it's called a flow test completed earlier this year from one of the hydrants. Typically, we like that flow test from 2 hydrants at the same time. The flow test we received was only for 1. So we have a third-party fire suppression consultant that we work with on these type of projects all around the country, and they will make a final recommendation. Typically, what we'll do as part of the permit process, we will have a sit-down with both the building and the fire departments and walk through all these things, fire hydrant locations, hose drop, types of fittings. Some jurisdictions use Stort's fittings, others use Siamese. So we will walk through all those technical elements as part of the final building design. So I'm not saying we're ignoring the comment. We'll take it into advice and consideration, and we'll have that conversation with them.
And we will coordinate with the fire.
Yeah.
And if that is an insistence.
The letter does say he's requesting that.
Oh, it did say requesting, okay. I thought he was inquiring if we
We
were.
are not showing it now. We will coordinate after we have the flow test and have the final design, and if it's still requested, we will incorporate it.
So I think I'm gonna do to that what I did with the other, which is that you'll either comply with it or you'll reach an agreement with the fire department. Is everyone else okay
I'll
with that?
give you my card, so when you want to do your flow test, I'll have the water department
Oh, great.
out there, okay?
Yeah,
I don't
perfect.
want you guys fooling around with a hydrant.
No, I personally do not go out and open hydrants, so. No, the fire consultant we have may actually want to witness it. It's one of
That's
the-
fine.
Yeah.
We got all the gauges, so just let us know when you want to do it.
Okay.
You got that big wrench?
Plenty of big wrenches.
Michael Sheldon again. I want to thank you all collectively about the robust discussion you had a few moments ago regarding the real meaning of solar-ready roofs, that while new buildings of this size have to make some allowance for solar, it doesn't necessarily mean they will have solar at this point in time. But as some of you may know, in the last year or so, there have been some major advancements in solar technology based on this material called perovskite. It is about 20% the weight of traditional solar panels and more than 50% efficient. Typical solar panels, you're lucky if you're even at 15%. And perovskites also can be molded. They can be turned into flexible panels and put on curved surfaces. So solar technology is going to go through incredible advancements over the next few years. But question, the beautiful extensive landscaping, this is something we've all been waiting for to get this horrendous Belleville Industrial Center that looks like something from World War I or World War II, have it replaced with this. Question is, are you going to have an irrigation system? Will all of these grounds be automatically watered on a regular basis, or are you just planting and letting nature take its course?
There will be an irrigation system, will be near the entryway to the property, and at the driveway down on Main Street, but it will not be throughout the entire.
It won't be.
No. But the plant materials that have been selected and coordinated with the staff recommendations will be purposely selected based on this climate.
All right, well, all right.
I think if it's actually helpful, Mika, like 6 to 7 pages of suggested changes to the landscape materials, so it was not a soft brush.
All right, well, I hope that nature was cooperative. We don't have another terrible drought in the next couple of years as we had this past summer, where a lot of new plantings were unfortunately destroyed.
They will want sprinkler systems, correct?
I guess it's not feasible cost-wise to try to expand your irrigation system, because this obviously is a huge piece of property. It's over 15 acres, and you have at least 4 acres, I believe you said, of green space here to properly irrigate all of the all of the lawns and trees and shrubbery, just so that you're guaranteed of thriving, and you have the best possible facade for this complex. Just something if you guys, if it's not a huge additional expense, I'd like to see this planning board.
That's a lot of money, Mr.
They
Schiff.
said there is going to be a sprinkler system.
Partial for some areas, but not the entire area. But especially, I think this, what we're seeing right now, this is the view from the current ShopRite. Is this the view from, looking from the northwest corner, so I guess you're near the ShopRite looking down into this warehouse facility, is that correct?
That is correct. I'm at the northwest corner.
So this is basically what ideally patrons of the ShopRite will be seeing when they look east into this complex?
They would have to look through railroad tracks and mature trees. So
There is an existing stand of mature
trees.
Materials in between
Yes.
us.
So that whole front is going to be blocked by trees, so you won't be able to see directly from the ShopRite parking lot into this complex. It's going to be blocked by a row of trees?
Yes.
All right.
And as Mr. Pepe did mention during our discussions, we've asked them to do some more cluster of trees over there. They have agreed to that.
What type of trees, by the way, are going to?
I'm not the landscape architect.
All right.
There's 7 pages, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So they have a choice.
Do you have anybody here who can answer that question about the, do any of you know the answer in the document
There's
you have?
7 pages of
Cherry
different
blossom.
plans. They're going to choose.
Michael, I'll do a landscape plan to go look at this table on it.
All right, I'm just curious to know what type of foliage is going to be used as
Hopefully
a
they're all
buffer.
going to be healthy, green, and nice
I
looking
hope
trees.
so, I'm just trying to make sure, doing what I can to
It's
make
a
sure that happens.
combination of evergreen, deciduous, as well as ornamental, landscape department.
And again, if there's any way you guys can get an expanded irrigation system to make this as beautiful as possible for all of us. Thank you.
Any other comments? Having none?
I have no further testimony to present. This board has any other questions, I can close.
I think we should, let's take a 5-minute recess so that I can have an opportunity to discuss with Mr. Pepe about the deviation. I would like to talk a little bit more about what we want to do with that. I don't know whether this is worth it. Do you want to move to that deviation? You, everybody wants to. Before you sum up, I know we had some conversation about the streetscape issue, and that this redevelopment plan sort of predated the changes with the streetscape. So I was thinking that before we take a vote on it, we should have the board understand exactly what the issue is. So I don't know whether, have you actually, can we swear in the planner just so?
She was sworn.
Oh,
She
was
was,
she already
yes.
sworn in? Okay, all right, good. All right, go ahead then.
All right.
If you could tell us a little bit about it.
Okay. So it seems the redevelopment plan has some very specific requirements of the streetscape design. They were based more off of, this one particular site as to how they want the sidewalk, after that landscaping and, concrete sidewalk and so on and so forth. Recently, the board approved a bridge redevelopment plan, which is like one site after this site. And there was a very specific streetscape design that was recommended, that is being produced and that is being provided. What we have asked this redeveloper to do as to be consistent with that streetscape design. This is not substantially detriment to our master plan, although it does not comply with the word-to-word of the redevelopment plan. Again, one of our goals of master plan is to be a more community-specific design, to create a more sense of place. Having a more consistent streetscape does that and is not substantially detriment to our zone.
So this is something that the town has really suggested to the developer, not the developer asking the town to do it.
No, the developer is ready to do what the town is asking us to do, and I think the consistency is the key over here that we want the developer to do.
Okay, so the reason I asked Mika to speak about it is so that we could understand what exactly that deviation is from the redevelopment plan before we vote on it. So when we go to vote on it tonight, if you, when and if we vote on it tonight, we should vote on it, be specific about whether we're voting on it with the deviation or without it, so that we have a clear resolution after the fact. Does this change, would this change trigger any variances at all to for the developer, other than the change in the streetscape?
I don't believe so. It's just the streetscape design that's
Right.
needed.
Does anybody have any questions for the planner? No?
So if we vote with the deviation, means it's going to comply with our standard.
It's basically not going to comply with the redevelopment plan standard, but it's going to comply with the bridge redevelopment plan, which is what we want to do. We want to create a consistent streetscape.
So these projects are next to each other.
Well,
This is
there's
just go-
another PSD site.
Right,
It's just
but the
separated by
concept,
the pole.
the concept is that
Yes,
this area is
to
gonna
create
have a consistent streetscape.
That's right.
Okay. Ms. Pepe, you wanna?
Just quickly on that subject, I'm requesting the deviation out of an abundance of caution. I think it can easily qualify as a design waiver too, because we're not dealing with any setbacks, bulk requirements, or anything of that sort. Make this closing quick. So we're going to eliminate a number of curb cuts. We're going to replace a dilapidated center with attractive new buildings. We're going to undertake remediation and clean up property that's been in need of remediation for some time, and we're going to be substantially reducing the impervious coverage at the site. I'd ask the board to vote favorably on the application.
Before you summed up, sorry, we're a little bit out of order. We probably should have had the public somewhere to testify. So we jumped the gun a little bit, but let's have them do that.
What I said now, later.
Does the public have any summary of this project? No? Very good. We're still in water here.
We do need Tom.
Yes.
So let's get him, then we can.
I'm sorry, personal stuff.
It's okay.
So, do you know what I just said? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so, can I get a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve the plan with the deviation and our conditions.
Yes.
Second. Got a second here? Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Alvarado,
Yes.
Mr. Bold,
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Swamin.
Yes.
Mayor Melham.
Yes.
Ms. Nettleford.
Yes.
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
Mr. Bynes.
Yes.
Approved, all in favor.
Thank you very much.
Jeremy? Motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you, everyone. See you